This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So we have been seeing very, very interesting times, especially with our young Kenyans. Our children, grandchildren, young brothers and sisters, nephews and cousins have become very, very active. And now they're not just sitting there. There's a constitution in Kenya. No, they're the ones who are saying Article 88 of the Constitution of Kenya talks about why? And they're putting content out there on social media where they're discussing what the Constitution says about various things that they think, right? Some of them you're looking at it and you think, I'm not sure that's the interpretation of that article that you... But the good thing is that you're consuming and you're getting an opinion around it, and we are getting more and more woke. Now, I have come across young Kenyans who have actually said, you know what, I'm even looking for a copy of the Constitution so that I can read it for myself. So this thing of that, I don't know, I'm not hearing. I hear, I refer, and I see it's true. Right? So there's a need then for Kenyans to get access to the Constitution. There's somebody who has actually taken up that mantle. Even before this Gen Z movement had started, she had already started doing this. She authored a Teen's Guide to the Constitution of Kenya. Her name is Sandra Ochola. Sandra, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm keeping well, thank you. And how are you?
Very well. It's good to say that you're a lawyer.
Yes. Yes.
Advocate of the High Court.
Yes.
Admitted to the bar.
Yes.
And you have a number. And you're legitimate.
Yeah.
If we go to the Law Society of Kenya, we will actually find you.
You will actually find it. Yes. You'll actually find the number. The status, then it's,
it's like this, like that.
It's like this, like that.
Because of various other reasons. Which you can explain.
Yes.
Very good. Siti.
Yes.
Please give Sandra the day's proverb.
I will.
So you know what happens. Every week he goes to one African country. He brings us proverbs every day. A new proverb every day.
All right.
Okay. This week he's been in the Union of the Comoros.
Yes, I have.
That's what it's called?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
The Union of the Comoros.
Yes. That is so. A chicken with beautiful plumage does not sit in a corner.
A chicken with beautiful plumage does not sit in a corner.
Yes.
What's your interpretation of it?
My interpretation is, if you have it, you must flaunt it.
Proper. Straight up. You know.
Well, once upon a time, when the elephant was crossing the river and it stopped and spoke to the rabbit.
Yo, right?
Siniako. Hebu jionyeshe.
Hebu jionyeshe. Hebu jitokeze.
Bas, that's
chema cha jiuza. Wewe mwenyewe. Beat your own drum.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think it's telling us? That it's important to boast and gloat?
It's not boast, exactly. It's an appreciation of who you are, a recognition of who you are, your talents, your capacities, and getting that out there to the world. Because I think we've grown up in a system that tells us when you talk about yourself, then you're being too much. You're either too much or you're too little. When you're too much, it's an issue. When you're too little, it's also an issue. So I think it's a recognition of who you are, an appreciation of who you are, and then putting that out there to the world. Because then again, if you do not know and you do not share, then people will not know what they need to know.
Is it too much, too little, or is it how? Because you can talk about what you've done, you can talk about your achievements, and it can present as simply giving information. On the other hand, you can present it, same information, the manner now, in a manner that suggests that apart from you, really, there is nobody else who exists who has those qualities. And it is best that people understand that you are unique and you are special, and essentially you are better than all of them, that sort of thing.
But who determines the how, though?
You do.
Yeah. Who determines the how? It's the person, most
It
times
is you
it's the
who
person
determines the
who's... I could say it the way you're saying it, that I could say it, I believe that I am... Yeah? But for you, you're going to interpret it as something else too
Yes,
much.
yes.
Yeah?
That is true. That is also very true. Because you see, for instance, if one says, I have offered a book that makes it easy for people to understand the Constitution of Kenya. Fact. No one else has been able to do that, to condense the Constitution in a manner that youthful people of a certain age can actually understand it. It is a fact. Now, if that information is given that when someone decides that it is too much,
Yes.
then that actually is a different conversation now.
Yeah.
You've entered the realm of divvying out problems. And that problem is not your problem, it's their
Exactly.
problem.
Their problem.
It's their
Exactly.
problem, it's not yours.
Yeah. So don't sit at... goes back to the proverb, don't sit at the corner.
Yes.
Talk
Come
about
out.
it.
Talk about it.
Yes.
I'm the best author of the Constitution.
Yes. And if you're arguing, tell us.
go and author your own
you go
book.
and author. Oh, show us the one you've authored, so we can compare.
Okay, so tell us about this book then. Teen's Guide to the Constitution of Kenya.
The Teen's Guide
Let's
to the...
start from the thinking.
Yes. The Teen's Guide to the Constitution of Kenya. It's a simplified version of a Constitution of Kenya 2010. And it's intended to promote law-related and constitutional education amongst young people. And my first reason for it, there are actually three reasons. My first one is that I realized that I did not know much about my country. Yes, I grew up in the Moi era, and so in terms of leadership and politics, Moi is all I knew, and for most of my generation, Moi is all we knew. He's the one you watched on telly morning to night, you go to school, you have the milk, and you are singing the loyalty pledge, you come back home, that's the conversation that's being had on the dinner table. So that was my interpretation, and for most of my generation, that was our interpretation of leadership and politics. And it's only later on that I'd finished school, gotten into the workforce. I was just starting out in the civil society space. And it happened that it's during that period that we were rebuilding post the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And that's when you get all this information about historical injustices and all these reports, all this manner of conversations. And I asked myself, why wasn't I told? Why didn't I know? Right? Because as a young person, this is information that affected me. That I think that's at the point when I first had my first engagement, or my first, I'd say, engagement with issues tribalism. Yeah, where you've grown up with people and you imagine that you are together, you're friends, but then it comes to politics at that particular point, you are no longer friends. And I wondered why this had such an impact on me and my generation. So that was one. Secondly, then now as we move along this recovery process and these reform processes, I worked with a number of organizations that were now concerned with, first, issues of transitional justice. Secondly, there was an organization that focused on the monitoring, the implementation of the KNDR, the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Accord. And third was Katiba Institute that was now focused on issues of the Constitution. So it's a combination of past issues, it's a combination of reform issues, and then it's a combination now we have a constitution that we are moving forward. But then what I realized was that there is very little information that is being given to young people. Most of the material, the civic education material and engagements that are being done are done by legal experts or for adults. Whatever communication is out there, whatever material is out there is being made for adults. And yet I often say a 13 or a 14-year-old today, come the next general election, he or she will be expected to vote. And he or she will be expected to perhaps even stand for office and make decisions. But what kind of preparation has been made, or what kind of preparation has been done to these young people, to this young person, to enable them to take up those positions as they should? And then the third reason I realized was that this disenfranchisement or this exclusion from civic education, it's not necessarily because there's something negative towards young people. I think it's also just a cultural thing where children are not supposed to be not invited to the table. You know, the assumption is that there are certain things they do not know, and even if they did, there are certain places that they should not be engaging in. But like I said earlier, the challenge comes in when they are actually supposed to be making those decisions or sitting at the table, they do not have the knowledge, they do not have the skills, they do not have the capacity. And so the book addresses those three issues, right? One, in terms of providing the young people with accurate history of where they are, so that we are not brushing over the issues that we have. If it was post-election violence, it was what it was. And so these are the reasons that caused it. This is what to look out for in the future. This is what to expect. If it's issues of corruption, if it's issues about bad governance, so to speak, that's provided in the book, so that as a young person you understand where you are coming from and where you are heading to. And then now to address the issues of access to information, then it has simplified the constitution and made it very age appropriate, made it colorful, and then also included activities to ensure that young people then are able to get the information and internalize it in a manner that they're able to.
Okay. When I look at that particular book, and what the role it can play, not just in sensitizing and informing people, but in changing the way in which we relate to our constitution. The question I have to ask is, how exactly have you planned to get this book out to those who need it most and those who are able to benefit from it?
I do agree that it's one of the ways to change our attitude towards our attitude and engagement towards the Constitution or with the Constitution. So what we have done is, one is to create platforms where young people are able to engage. And one of the things we have is called the Young Citizens Program, where now we are reaching out to schools where the young people are. We are reaching out to them through churches. We are reaching out to them through the various communities that they have. And then now finding means and ways which to engage with them on a short-term basis, and for some of them on a long-term basis. For example, my friends and I, we were at Alliance High School yesterday, and what we often do is we go to a school or we go to where the young people are, and we seek audience. We pay perhaps a half a day, where we choose a section of the Constitution. Is it leadership and integrity? Is it citizenship? And we find means and ways of discussing this with the young people. Now, moving forward, there are plans to have this put into schools so that it forms part of the
curriculum.
Yes, it forms part of the curriculum, so that a grade 6 or a grade 7 or even a high schooler is able to use this as a reference material, right? So that it's part of the material that you get when you're doing your social studies or history classes or whichever other geography, whatever it is, then this book forms part of the material that you use as a reference material. So then now we are catering for the students and the children in school, and also establishing programs and platforms out of school where now we can engage them holistically on the Constitution.
If I may ask, so I take it by what you've said that you have had conversations with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development.
It's already approved.
It's already approved.
Yeah, it's already
so
approved,
been approved?
as a reference material.
Oh, what does that mean when you say reference material?
Reference material. You have say for social studies, or for, I'll give you an example with English. You have the main English textbook, right? That now you use to do your exercises. But then you can be told you get this extra book that can now, like a dictionary or an atlas, So you have the main course material, but then now this comes in as a reference material or a complementary material.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does our constitution, much as it has been built as a very progressive constitution, does it provide specifically for civic education, for people to get to know about governance, for people to get to understand the constitution and the other laws that are attendant to it?
It does to a large extent, and all through. And directly and indirectly. We've had the conversations in the public space about we the people, exercising it directly or indirectly, requiring then that people exercise the Constitution. The Constitution, whatever institution is undertaking public duty or engaging in any public exercise, then they're expected to engage the public, and part of that public participation is then engaging in civic education and letting the public know what it is exactly you are going to do, what decisions are you going to make, and what is their role in it. So it's across all decisions made, it's across all through the Constitution, as each and every one of us exercises their rights and freedoms.
Do you find that there's desire, that there's real genuine raw interest in folks wanting to really know what the ultimate law of the nation says, or what it does, or what it provides, or what it protects for? Is there desire innate for people to know?
Yes, there is a desire, directly again and indirectly, and the indirect part comes in when you are put in a situation where you need to get out of that situation. Say it's a legal issue. You definitely go and look for information to help you address your case or to help you get out of that mix. And now, given the situation that we have across the country, then you have many young people saying, or even the older generation saying, that we've gotten to a point where we want the law to work for us. So which is this law? Where can I find it? And how can I use it to my benefit? So there's a lot of hunger, and there's a lot of curiosity. We've seen that in the public space, and it's not just right now. I'll tell you, like the experience we had yesterday with the young people. They are very eager. They are very knowledgeable. They are very
Woke.
Yes, they're very woke, socially mobile. And you'll find some of the questions we are being asked, now we have a constitution, is it really working for us? And there are young people who can actually talk to you about the contents of the constitution. So that shows they might not be out there with that information. They might not be implementing it where we expect them to implement it, but they're actually engaging with the document. Yeah.
There's a lot of legalese, though, in the document of the constitution, in other laws, even when we have the Kenya law reform and, posting even the language, the judgments from the court and all the laws, it's still a lot of legalese. Is there a need to break it down on what's the best way to break it down for all audiences? Because not all of us will not understand that whole thing of, unless we have a guy who comes and we see him on TV and the people shall, the people may, and you're like, hiya. That's actually the difference there. How do we get to break it down, to break down all these legal matters for people to understand better?
One, I believe it's identifying your target audience. And in this case, it's, if you're talking about the Teens Guide, it's identifying that it's young people that you want to engage in. So what is it that makes young people absorb information, if you could put it in that framework? One, it has to be short and to the point. They're not going to read very lengthy texts, they already have that in school. So they're not going to read very lengthy texts. At the same time, they're very visual. Being very visual, you want to include color, you want to include illustrations, and the illustrations also have to be very relatable to them, so that you go through the book, you're going to find, if it's a young man who's depicted, is not dressed in lots of drab, it's not flashy, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Fashionable.
Yes, fashionable, in fashionable attire. They lead illustrations. And then third, how do you engage young people? Then you make it questions and answers. We've given options for activities. Some you can do on your own, others you can do in terms of group work. And then at the same time, making it the information relatable. I remember when I first developed the first draft of it, as I was developing the manuscript, because this is the second edition. The first edition was launched in 2016. So when I first developed the first draft and I gave it to someone for review, an editor, I wrote the first manuscript. I wrote it with a lot of, you need to do this, or it's very instructional. But the advice was, the review was, you have to make it relatable, so that you bring in the question of, do you know? Are you aware? This is the constitution. For use a lot of you relatable language to move it forward. So it goes back to identifying your target audience, and then very critical understanding of how they operate, what they think, and what they want.
Okay, let's take a break. 29 minutes after 9. Our guest this morning is Sandra Ochola. She's an advocate. She's the author of a book called Teen's Guide to the Constitution of Kenya. She's so far told us about the book, the thinking behind it, the justification for why she did all this painstaking work, and what she's currently now enjoying, engaging with young people and seeing them bright and actually engaging and enjoying the contents of the book. Yeah. Plus also you getting the feedback and seeing, actually, these little munchkins understand things. We've been thinking that they don't.
Okay, so I mean, this is very interesting because you laid the background in terms of what spurred you on to do this, and then the interest that we see obviously across the nations. Who is it we talk about? Folks will then be able to read it and it becomes reference for them. And is this across the country?
Yes, it is. It is across the country, and it's ideally for a teenager. Teen's Guide to the Constitution, ages between 13 to 19. And being in a space where they're giving them opportunities and platforms where they're able to access the information and they're able to access the book. At the moment, the book is available at the Nuria stores in Nairobi, but now with the KCD approval and with the increased attention for the book and the increased demand for the book, our intention is now to take it all across the country. And I often say, while the book has been developed for a teenager between 13 to 19, because it's this period that now you're able to infuse values, and clear values in an individual. By the time someone gets to 20, 25, there are certain things and certain value systems that are already set. So this is the right opportunity for us to give them the information they need for us to give them the kind of education and the kind of value system, to inculcate in them the kind of value system we'd like for them to have. So while it's been made and created for a teenager, 13 to 19, they're still young adults, and they're still adults and even those of the older generation who find it valuable. Because as you said, the Constitution, the one we have, the main one, is very technical, has a lot of legalese. So it's a material that has cut across all age groups as much as it was written for the 13 to 19-year-old.
Do you have to deal with a misconception, what I think is a misconception, that because you understand the things of governance and that you want to have a knowledge and understanding, that it is by necessity pushing you towards a position in government, which may not necessarily be the case? Do you have to deal with that where someone says, okay, well, now that I understand it, now I want to be a member of parliament or I want to be a governor? Whereas we can have folks who are aware of what the law is about the Constitution, about government and how its structures work in order for us to really have citizen-based governance.
Exactly.
Do you deal with that?
I do deal with that. And it's largely in the public space, I could say, because the perception is that the more knowledgeable you are, the more, and ideally it's true, the knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the more powerful you are. So then now it boils down to how you're going to use this power that you have because of the knowledge that you have. To
monetize the power.
Yes, you monetize the power and use it to rule other people, and use it as a tool, as a tool for access. And ideally, as you said, most people now use it then to get into politics. And I guess those are now the kind of decisions that we need to have with our young people, because the law is for you to use for your benefit. It doesn't matter what station in life you are or wherever you come from. You need to know the law, and you need to know how to use it, because then it helps also the community and the young people then get to understand how they can engage in governance, right? Some of the conversations that we are having right now, for instance, if we start talking to a young person about leadership and governance, some of the questions we ask, what's the difference between a politician and a leader? What's the difference between leadership and politics? Getting them to a space where they can have those conversations. Then now, once we are clear on what leadership is, then now it's easier to engage a young person on chapter 6. For instance, now we are aware of leadership. Then what is leadership and integrity? What do you expect from a leader?
The Constitution is a very big document, right? How many chapters does it have?
17.
Okay. And very many articles.
Yes.
So how did you choose to compress this?
Well, it's the Teen's Guide to the Constitution. It has all all the chapters, right from chapter 1 to chapter 2. Then it has an introductory section, right from the first chapter to the last. Right? So you take chapter 1, you condense it, you place it in you put it in a manner that the young people are able to absorb it. Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. So it cuts across all the chapters of the Constitution.
Do you thread the chapters one into the other so one can then relate that what I'm reading in chapter 8 is related to that chapter 1?
Exactly.
And what I'm reading in chapter 16 is related to chapter 9.
Right? Exactly. It's like I said, it's a guide, so you don't deviate so much from the original document, so that even the person who's going to use the main constitution is still able to relate it. And then, just like you said, the threading aspect of it, there are certain things that cut across. When you're going to talk about the values, Article 10, for instance, you find a way of having that included in all the chapters, so that then it's not just a reading material, it's also a source of lifelong learning. Yeah.
Have you managed to get feedback from people who've interacted with this publication in the schools you've gone to?
Yes. Very positive, because like we started, and I'm hoping now you won't interpret it differently. It's the first of its kind. Yeah. It's the first of its kind, and so then and at least one that has gotten to that level where now you're actually engaging teenagers, because that has been a gap for a long while. Right? That has been a gap for quite a while. Like we said, we started out by saying the civic education, but there are particular groups that have been left out of that civic education. So the feedback has been very positive, not only by the caregivers and the parents and the teachers and the institutions, but also by the young people themselves.
Okay,
Yes.
let me interpret this badly now.
That's plumage.
Yeah, that's
City.
plumage.
There. Walk around. Why should I call? Somebody's asking. Okay, so first of all, to remind you, the title of the book is The Teen's Guide to the Constitution of Kenya. And you've said physical copies are available in
At the Nuria store.
The Nuria store.
Yeah.
Is it available online?
It's right now. It's available physically at the Nuria store, and they also have. You can also order online, and then you have the Young Citizens program as well that now provides the information. It breaks it down in a digital format. So for those of you, you can reach out to me on social media, and then now we can see how to get you into the Young Citizens program.
Okay. So what's the social media handle then?
Sandra Ochola. It's Sandra Ochola crossboard.
Sandra Ochola on
Yes.
all
Yes.
social media platforms. Reach out to you, and then you can help them to get the book.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is all about making sure that our young people get to understand, get to have access to that civic education, get to interact better with our constitution, with our laws, so they are better in governance. So far, you're running several programs, and you've told us you've been to schools, you've been here and the other. Who's funding you?
Well, if there's a funder or a sponsor out there, please reach out, because it's been since 2015. I'd say it's been a lonesome journey, if I could say that, because since 2015 the first material was launched in 2016, the second one in the second edition developed in 2022. So it's most of it has been it's been a personal initiative, so to speak. So it's now that with the putting the material out there that I'm looking for partners, and I'm looking for individuals who we can join hands in getting this information out there. Yeah, so I'm open to those partnerships. I'm open to those sponsorships, especially for those engaged in civic education and those involved with young people in this space.
But with the approval by KICT as reference material, that means that now it can be purchased by schools.
Yes.
And made available to all the schools.
Exactly.
So then the next thing would be, how do you encourage the young people to read the book, to engage on the book, to debate on the book? And that would mean that now you start looking at various clubs that are available in schools. Yeah. Currently, what structures are there for like clubs in schools and all?
that, like I said, that is one of the mechanisms that you are using. It's in school in terms of it being used within the classroom structures, and then now out of school where now you are creating those platforms. And ideally, one of those platforms then is like the clubs. You have debate clubs, you have the journalism clubs, where you have law clubs even. A number of clubs, yeah. So then now with the program, because the program is not just out of school, like I said, the Young Citizens program, then we take it in school, yeah, and we say within this particular club, then could you give us a day in a week? Yeah, could you give us a day or two, or maybe a day or three in a month, where now we can come and engage the members of this particular club. We can come and engage the law clubs. And then what we have tried to do with the program itself is to make it fun. Because again, we have to cater to the age group, make it fun. So we have debates, we have games, and then there's also the need to expose them to professionals in the industry, depending on the issues that we are discussing at that particular point. So then, do we have lawyers coming in? Do we have judges coming in? Do we have educators coming in? So that then it's not only them learning on their own, but then having other people coming to feed into the knowledge that they already have, and by that then encouraging intergenerational conversations.
What do you think it means to have a youth or this teenage group who in the next 10, 15 years will be at the place where, or maybe not even that far, even closer from what we are seeing currently? What does it actually mean to have this group of people who is knowledgeable about the things that concern them as citizens of a nation? Why?
It then means peace. It means prosperity, it means development, it means a healthy nation, because the purpose of the law is then to promote those things, yeah, so that you are able to use the law towards that purpose for yourself in the event that your rights and your freedoms are being violated, for your community, what opportunities does it present for you to improve your community. So then having a generation that is knowledgeable, having a generation that knows the Constitution, having a generation that then can use the law and the Constitution to their benefit, then improves the quality of life for that generation and improves the society in general. So it's very critical for them to have this information, and the earlier, the better. So that, like I said, we are starting quite early, and then we're inculcating in them the kind of values that we want them to have. Because then again, you see with the kind of conversations we have, there's issues of culture. Culture takes a long time for you to build. There are issues of values and value systems. You cannot build that in one day and change that in one day. So the earlier we begin, the better for us as a society.
We talked of, I asked about feedback earlier on. When you get feedback, is there a structured manner in which you receive the feedback? Is there structured way in which you ask for feedback?
Right now, it's been mostly on social media and on the various platforms that we've created with the book, where you have individuals who say, I'd like the book, I really like this book, where can I get it? Largely, and it's through our social media platforms. That is what we are using right now, mostly.
Well, I asked a question, for instance, you said there are 17 chapters. I'm certain that if someone goes through these chapters, there'll be chapters that appeal to them more than others.
Yes.
For instance, the Bill of Rights. Okay? Because if you introduce someone to a concept that they can relate to, vis-a-vis others that they may not relate to as much, it then gives us a platform from which now you can have a debate and to understand why it is they have a preference and why it is they don't have a preference for others. Now, that information is actually pertinent in that it actually even gives you the capacity to project how people will respond to the law when it is actually put into practice. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you start with the theory part of it, which is the discussion. But then you think of another, like, if you ask me, the Bill of Rights is exceedingly, not extremely, exceedingly important because it opens one's mind to these enormous possibilities that you have as a person and where it is that our Constitution places you. Now, other things now can relate to just this very... Now, when it started early, see, we keep thinking of high schools. And me, my mind actually went to kindergarten. And I was thinking, what would it be like if kindergarten children who are at the age of 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, interacted with the Constitution? What exactly would we get? And if you're thinking of the effect, what do you think a child who interacts with the Constitution in kindergarten, when they get to primary school, how will it affect the way they even relate to the school, their life? Now think of these students when they now get to secondary school.
Yep. And especially now with CBC, which is looking at encouraging the children to think beyond, question, and test and try out things. When it's sending them, go there and let's clean the community, go there and participate in these kind of activities.
Yeah.
So maybe is the challenge here, go younger?
Yes, I'm just thinking of
So
possibilities.
there's a teens guide,
Yes.
then there's a pre-teens guide,
Yeah.
Yes.
and then there's
A tween guide.
Yes, exactly.
a twin guide,
Yes,
a
yes,
toddler's guide.
yes.
I like that. That's a really good challenge, and I like what you say. In terms of the guide providing a basis for other conversations. Yeah, in terms of the human rights, you take one topic and then you can predict what kind of conversations people are going to have around it. And I'll give an example. Yesterday, when we were engaging with the boys at the school, the kind of conversations that are there in the public, a young man comes up and says, now this Constitution, it's not working for us. I say, why?
Yep.
Because then, especially this women rep position, all these women...
Why do we have them?
Why do we have all these women? Why do we have all these women reps? Tell me 1 or 3 women reps, what are they doing and all that? So then, depending on who he's talking to, or depending on where the conversation is had, then that will it's an opportunity for conversation, and it's an opportunity for you to talk about the Constitution and talk about society in general, because then that got us into the place where we are saying, why do you think we have provisions, or why do you think the Constitution is providing for women representative positions? What was it that it was trying to cure? Yeah, and will you say that the reason as to why we have women rep positions in the Constitution has been cured? So then you have that kind of discussion, so that it's not just learning the Constitution, but interrogating it, engaging in it, and by then broadening your mind and broadening your conversations on issues of society.
There's something that you said earlier, among the reasons and your journey towards authoring this book was your own life. You grew up and there were very many things that were happening in the country and you were just oblivious to.
Yeah.
And then you become now a young adult and these things start coming and popping to you, and you start interacting and engaging with them, and you're like, how come I did not know that? So there was sort of, yes, there was civic education, but civic education was just in the structure. We have a DO, DC. I did civics in my days in primary school at the beginning of 844, and it was just teaching us this. The structure of government, but nothing deeper. And then there was a need now to start interacting with deeper knowledge of it. So Ndu asked you how you see then the youth who consume this kind of content now becoming the kind of citizen that they become in the future.
Yeah.
I want you to go back there. Paint for us the picture of you as you were growing up and the adults that you became versus the youth that you're interacting with now and the adults that you see them becoming. Show us the difference.
Yes.
Because of more increased access to this kind of material, this is the kind of citizen that we will have in the future, and how different that will be from the current older citizens.
I'd say it's either by design or just things happening. Yeah. You have instances like what I believe myself and my generation went through was very intentional. Yeah, the indoctrination, very intentional at a very young age. So then you get to a certain age and you have a very distorted view of your country. You have a very distorted view of your place and role in that country, and you have a very distorted view of the laws and the structures that exist. And then that, of course, then does a number of things to you. You're not able to identify when things go wrong, for instance, because you do not know. We talk about issues of human rights. If you do not know that you have a right to water or a clean environment or housing, you will not know whether that is being promoted or whether that is being violated. If you do not know you have your political rights, you do not know. I remember an instance where there was a young man, there was something on social media, and I think a young man was being arrested. So he's struggling. He doesn't want to be arrested, and you have people surrounding him. Yeah, and they say, wacha kushike, lazima kushike, wacha tu akushike, utajulia mbele. You know? Utajulia mbele. Now, that just tells you the kind of mindset. They don't have the information, and even if they do, they don't know how to implement it, you know? And so those are the kind of things. Just, it gets you to a point where it takes away the agency from you. That lack of information takes away the agency from you. And my generation people, I'm hoping this is not going to come out in a weird way, but then that perhaps could explain to an extent why the millennials are being accused of being very
pathetic.
They're just laid back.
Lethargic.
They're very laid back.
They're even better than the exes.
Yeah.
Ex nikinasis nyinyi mko, I think you. Wewe I think ni you.
Alphabet. Sorry.
Yeah. So that could explain, that could be one of the reasons, because civic education very minimal, the encouragement for you to have that sense of urgency and is not there.
Yeah.
So you get into the world and it's about yourself. Yeah, it's about what you can accumulate. Everything is really nice, and even if things are not going well, there's someone else who can deal with that. It's not exactly my
somebody should come and feel sufficiently philanthropic to pull you out of your status and elevate you.
Exactly.
And if they don't, then it's because you've done something wrong.
You've done something wrong, and if it's not addressed, then it's fine. You know, it's okay. We'll find a way around it along the way. And then now you contrast that with the generations after, the Gen Zs and after, there's a lot of access to information. There are a lot of platforms for them to express themselves. The information is very, very readily available. So you find that they have more agency and they have more... they are more active within their communities, because then they've been given the kind of tools, they've been given the knowledge that they need. So you can imagine having this replicated in the next generations more and more. Then what kind of agency will we have as a generation, as a country, and as a community?
You know, there is this process of actually owning the Constitution and understanding that it's actually meant for you as an individual, not us in the amorphous sense of the word. Because I belong to the generation where the presidency and the president trumped the Constitution, whatever it was, because the president was the Constitution. The president could decide as they saw fit, and they could make laws. Utterances were law. So that socialization discourages one from even bothering to understand what the Constitution actually says, because you figure, of what good will it be? However, if at a very early age one interacts with the Constitution and gets to the point of understanding that this really is the manual of operations that is useful for you from a legal perspective of how it is you interact with the people around you and the country, then it means that you have actually begun a process of building a population of people who will not just be law-abiding, but they'll be abiding by a law they understand.
Exactly.
And even when they disagree with it, that gives now room for further discussion on how to improve on that law.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And they can always choose how to change it, when to change it. Yeah. Because because each generation, I often say also, each generation has to decide for itself. What was moral or allowed 10, 15, 50 years ago cannot pass now. And the things that we find agreeable now might not be agreeable to the Gen A's as they move along. So then we often say the Constitution is a living document, and then it is a reflection of where we are as a society, of our hopes and dreams. So then if it gets to a point where then now we do not like what it is providing, it's no longer reflecting where we are as a society, that is why now then you have provisions for amendment of the Constitution, so that then you are changing it as per for it to reflect what you want for the society, for it to reflect what you want as a community. And I like what you said in terms of raising that generation. I believe there's a very good space for intergenerational conversations, so that now you have people, all the ones who participated in the making of the Constitution, the one who participated in the fight for independence, all these categories of people can then infuse in the young people these experiences. What was it that happened? How did we get here? What can be done better? What can you improve on as we move forward?
When the Constitution was written, there are many who said this is such a serious overhaul of the system that even the system itself doesn't recognize it. 14 years down the road, the system is now saying, what do you mean? Because this is what we are seeing. We are seeing a constitution that did everything contrary to what was there before. What was there before was the system determining how it's going to engage the citizens, the information it's going to give the citizens, how it's going to inculcate values, it will define the values, and this is it. And then the Constitution of Kenya says, actually the power is with the people, and they're the ones who determine everything. And the system is supposed to be conforming to the people. It is a difficult thing to do. And the system, as we are seeing, is fighting back. How do we ensure that we safeguard that even as the young people are consuming this?
It's remaining vigilant, because we've talked about culture and we've talked about value systems. The culture we have has been there for a while. We talk about tribalism, we talk about corruption, we talk about bad governance, and of course, looking at it also that there are other good things that have happened and continue to happen across the country. But then for these ones that we say collectively that need changing, it is going to take a while. You do not change a 50-year-old culture in a month or in 2 days. And if I could extend it to the engagements that we are having now, I think there's also, again, an opportunity for intergenerational conversations, including with what's happening now with our young people, because you understand the youthful zeal of I want it now. I want everything to change now. This has to change tomorrow, today, all these appointments and whatnot. But in the event that they sit around the table with older people, the people who've gone through these processes of multipartism and whatnot, they'll be told these things take a while. What you do not then need to lose is the momentum. You have to take care of yourself. You have to keep eternally vigilant. You have to do all these things to get you to this particular point.
But something should happen now.
Yes, something should happen now. And they'll be told that during our time, these are the things that happened now. And this is how it has changed society. This one took 5 years. The other one took 10 years. And then now you have those conversations. Without that, then it becomes a challenge for all of us as we move towards changing our culture.
Sandra, thank you for this beautiful conversation. And all the best as you continue engaging the young people, taking the Teens Guide to the Constitution of Kenya across the country.
Thank you very much.
Sandra Ochola Wakili is the author of that book, and say it's available in what books?
Nuria Bookstore.
Nuria Bookstore,
yes.
Which also has an online platform.
Yes.
And you can then also make online orders. And reach out to me on my social media handles. Then we can continue having these conversations, including on the Young Citizens program that's ongoing. Sawa.